Cool.
So I've been really, really excited to sort of like get you on, mainly because I generally think that your book is probably one of the most influential things that I've read in my absolute entire career. And going into, the Rip Body site and, all the articles you write, there's just an impeccable sort of like attention to detail, which came across so much in the way this podcast came about, of like getting some really brutal feedback, which I just love because it shows the integrity of you as a character, which I think is fascinating. So, like, for people that don't know you, tell us a little bit about who is Andy Morgan and what's he do?
So I am from Birmingham in the UK. I currently live in Tokyo. I've lived in Japan for 16 years. I'm based here. I've been working online full-time as a nutrition and training coach for 10 years now. I've built up a brand called rippedbody.com is the domain for that. I've also built out athletebody.jp, which is, I think it's fair to say, the most trusted nutrition and training website in the country. And all this came about because I was in the gym training with, it was a poor area. I was an English teacher, assistant English teacher. I wasn't earning very good money. I lived in a poorer area of Osaka. The gym was super hardcore. Everyone was a bodybuilder or competitive powerlifter. They were super working class and they were wasting a ton of money on supplements. I wanted to just tell them that, hey, you don't need to buy all of this stuff. And so I decided I'd try and I tried to tell them, they didn't listen. I made a website because I was like, well, if it's a website, it looks more official. So I put up my thoughts in English, translated them into Japanese, and did that, continued to do that. Still didn't care. Because again, who am I when all of the information that they have on their side is supporting that these supplements are amazing? Because obviously there are no financial incentives to translating. You don't need to take supplements because the majority don't work, but there are plenty of financial incentives to say that they do. So really that language barrier, caused this information gap, and I wanted to try and do something about that. And in doing something about that, a guy called Phil asked me in the comments, this is a guy from West Coast States, he said in the comments, how much is your online coaching? I knew that Martin Birkin had been doing online coaching at the time, so I'd heard of it. And I was like, I sent him an email. I told him what I thought was fair, because I'd worked with a couple of people in person, helping them with the nutrition and training side of things. I worked with Phil, told people on the blog, and just kind of took it from there. And then now, I'm known for ripbody.com for the English speaking world. For Japan, my website is known. I'm less well known. I don't intend to be the face of things particularly. My face is up there, but it's about the brand and the quality. It's not about me. It's not the Andy show. And then I've written the Muscle and Strength Pyramid books, Nutrition and Training with Andrea Valdez and Eric Helms. And what will the future bring? Who knows? But exciting. I've got big plans for the year ahead.
So, you mentioned going into online coaching from that, that comment from that guy Phil. You were doing online coaching before online coaching was really a thing. It's this boom in popularity now that everyone and their dog is an online coach. What sort of made you go down that route as opposed to the in-house route? And has the boom in online training changed the way you work, or is it stay consistent?
3 reasons. 1, language barrier. So my English was way better than my Japanese, and it still is. 2, because of that language barrier, the number of people that were willing to hire me would be exceptionally limited if it was by geography, which was Osaka, right? But with online, I had access anywhere. And that gave me access to American customers. I wasn't particularly targeting American customers, but they're the ones that were first on board with the idea of online coaching. And they appreciate the value of coaches more than I think the English do. I can't speak for the Europeans generally. but from, let's say, the way that I grew up, seeking help was kind of like admitting weakness. I know it's bloody stupid, but there's that side. And then the third side, that was where the opportunity really presented itself. So I just decided to run with it.
And do you feel like, I mean, like you've mentioned two sites there, like obviously your online coaching is going towards the Western market because of this language barrier. Like, what was it that made you sort of to say, I'm going to set up a site that's totally in Japanese and go down that route, even if Japanese wasn't as much your strong suit?
Sure, no. So I wanted to make a difference to the industry in Japan. The only reason for the website was to make that difference. I reached out to Martin Birkin of leangains.com, Alan Aragon, Lyle McDonald, and I said, hey, I want to translate your articles, put them out in Japanese. I want to see if I can make a difference here in Japan. And they kindly said yes. And, you know, my blog originally, it was in English and Japanese. If you go to I think it's called webarchive.org. If you just type in Wayback Machine, I think webarchive.org will pop up. If you type in rippedbody.jp, you can see and scroll back to, I think the first saved capture of the website is August 10th or something like that. By the way, using that bit of tech there, you can see any website in the past, which is kind of fun. You can see how shit my website was. You could see that it was in 2 languages. And so I wanted to break that off because it would just be cleaner and serve better, especially the Japanese. The English speakers didn't seem to mind. But, you know, the whole point in starting this was I wanted to make a difference in Japan. And I felt that I had this massive imposter syndrome, which I think was fair at the time. Like, I didn't feel that I deserved the attention I was getting from the English readers. And I felt that it was because I was, you know, seen to have a connection with these people, you know, Martin, Alan, Lyle, which wasn't really there. I was just talking about their stuff and then getting that translated, simplifying their stuff, right? And so I wanted to, you know, pay it back or pay it forward. And so I wasn't going to quit, because then I would have been someone that betrayed my word. And that word was, I was going to do my best to make a difference here in Japan. And, you know, we've worked for the past 10 years to do that.
I think going like you speak a lot about, you know, a lot of what you do is kind of like ruthless consistency with the foundations. And we'll talk about that in terms of how you approach your coaching and the systems that you do anyway. But I think the old phrase of like, how you do one thing, how you do everything is so like apt when we're discussing your career. Because if we look at, say, like online coaching before it was really a thing, another thing was like, obviously, like now, like the move with the YouTube movement and moving on to videos and podcasts, and you know, you do a bit of that, but a lot of your stuff has been through written word. And you mentioned your website being like, you have such an attention to detail with regards to your website. You know, what is it that made you go down those routes in terms of written stuff? Was it just a skill set that you had? Did you see the benefit of it? You know, why is the website so important to you as part of your business?
Few questions to unpack there, but podcasting wasn't really a thing back then. Also, YouTube was in its infancy then. Writing was just, you know, the easiest way to get a message across. This is 2011, remember, and that's all I knew from my, not peers, my seniors. I know the word in Japanese. The people that came before me in the industry that I looked up to. So it's a bit of like monkey see, monkey do, and it was successful. And the other thing I felt about the website was, when someone's trying to make a decision on who to hire, like, if you have a website and a body of work out there that anybody can access and not hidden behind a paywall, like, here's an article, buy my book, right? I have books, and it'd be lovely if people bought my books, but I'm not on this podcast to try and shill someone anything. I'm genuinely happy if people come to the website and they're helped. And by making something that people can openly see, they can see what you're about, and then they can make that decision on whether they want to hire you before me as the coach has even had a conversation with them. I've got raving fans. It feels weird to say, but I've got raving fans who I've never spoken to, but feel that they know me. And I think that's a wonderful thing, because it means I've touched their lives quite deeply. So I'm able to help 1,000 people seriously, because, maybe 10,000 to one of the people that actually casually read something, and then versus the people I coach. But, only 1 in 10 will actually apply this stuff diligently, right, and get the results and feel super grateful. But that's still a fantastic ratio. Maybe I've exaggerated, but even by an order of magnitude then, but even if it's like 100 to 1, that's fantastic, right? So that I've taken one person's money and coached and worked with them, right? And they've obviously felt, I've still got a good reputation, so they've obviously felt that the value exchange was more than worth it for them. And yet there are now 99 other people who have this feeling of, wow, that was a great website. I feel grateful for that. I'd love to buy you a beer, Andy, kind of thing, right? So wherever I go, I've got someone willing to buy me a beer or give me a couch to sleep on or whatever. And that's cool. I think that's the wonderful part of the internet. And why the website is important to me as just a little bit of an extension is that I could create content for Instagram, but it disappears. If it's YouTube, if it is a website, then it's searchable. Those are two, like Google. Loads of people find me through Google and YouTube. Not that I'm really do anything on YouTube. That's another fantastic search engine as well for people to find you. The content lasts and it can grow. The view counts can grow over time.
I think that's like, a really, really important thing. And it's the reason why I think I really engage more myself with long form content. It's the reason why I love podcasting. I have for many, many years. The reason why I've spent so much time reading a lot of the articles that you put out there, because they're not snippets. They're not 120 characters. And while that's good to get people in the door, you say like creating that connection. I've listened to people that host podcasts, and as you said, you feel like you know them, even though you've never had that conversation with them, because you get such more of an insight in terms of whether it's a long form interview or whether it's like a encyclopedia of knowledge that hyperlinked in terms of your website. And so going on to a little bit about, you mentioned sort of like having, places to stay, people to go and see. You mentioned before I've read your blog and we talked about your upbringing and 3 defining moments that changed your life. And before we delve into some of them, what made the move to Japan in the first place? Like I can totally relate to maybe wanting to get out of Birmingham, but what had you move to, why Japan? Why Tokyo?
Tell you what, though, wherever I've been, even though I've been back to India twice, I've been there for a total of 3 times, 5 months in total. We do the best curries, mate. We do the best curries. I'm still looking for that Birmingham Balti fix. Why Japan? Karate was a hobby when I was in my late teens, and then again I've kind of restarted it while at uni. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had just come back from backpacking around Southeast Asia. As I was going into my final year of uni, I didn't know what job I wanted. I certainly wasn't going to go into accounting or finance or one of the big 4 it was at the time, even though that was what my degree was. I just finished a book about a guy. It was a book swap I did in a hostel in Bali. It was about a guy who did Aikido in Tokyo, and he did this brutal 1-year-long Aikido course. It's a course that you have to survive if you want to be considered for the next stage of the Tokyo riot police application. Now, he as an English guy, a foreigner, he couldn't become a cop in Japan, but he just volunteered to do the training anyway for shits and giggles. And I just read that book, and I'm trying to fill out these application forms I remember going to PricewaterhouseCoopers website, and I was trying to, fill out this online application for a job. And they're like, why do you want this job? And I'm like, because I'm supposed to apply for this job. Yeah, no. So I quit. I closed the browser, and I just thought, well, why not go to Japan for a year and teach English? And my backpacking around Southeast Asia had given me confidence. The year before had given me confidence because I spent 3 months in India, in Calcutta, working for a student organization there and living with a host family. That was called AIESEC, AIESEC. To anyone who's at uni or about to go into uni, I'd highly recommend you look them up. brilliant opportunities I had there. And then why karate in the first place? It's because when I was either 14 or 15, I was standing at a bus stop. The 107 bus comes around the corner from King's Standing, parks outside the cinema, stops outside the cinema. About 20, 30 kids get off. I say kids, they're about the same age as me. One of them kicks open the rear upper deck of the double-decker bus, dives through. They're all, I don't know, drugged up, drunk or whatever. They cross the street and they just decide to have a fight, which is not a fight. They basically just decided to attack me and my friends. I got a bottle to the head, and that shook me up a bit because I went to school in a rough area, Aston, and I was used to watching my back when I was there. But I wasn't used to watching my back in my hometown, Sutton Coldfield, and yeah, it messed with me a bit. And my piano teacher at the time, Bob, he said, "Come down to karate with me." So I did, and then after about a year of doing karate, I decided, it's probably a good idea if I go to the gym, because I was 6'2" and 68 kilos. So I was, very skinny. And the idea behind that being the best form of self-defense is not to get attacked in the first place, not look like an easy pickings in the first place. So, sorry, a bit of a long-winded answer, that one, but I think it covers the points there on the journey.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly relate to that story. I grew up Wolverhampton, so it's not too far from where you're from, and similar sort of thing, right? You're always watching your back there. You're only one person wanting a cigarette away from a scrap, and this happened multiple times. I have, sharpened belt wounds here when people have turned their belt buckle into a weapon. I've had, I've been stabbed and all this sort of stuff that's come through just living in a wonderful place like Wolverhampton. And playing rugby for me was similar to what you had with karate. It's like you go from wanting to defend yourself, going to the gym to get bigger, and then going into a world playing rugby where if you're the small guy, you're going to get thrown around. But what do you feel like you went from there, you went into moving around India and then coming into Japan? What do you feel like, how have you developed through traveling? I found that moving to Hong Kong for me, I remember looking back a year, 18 months into my time here and going, I've changed a person more than I ever thought I did. It wasn't like a drastic thing, but you look back and it's like, it really does, in a way, mature you. Do you feel that same things happen with you, moving away from home to the other side of the planet?
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is, I've been here 16 years now. So I moved here when I was 21. And, I've basically spent my adult life here. So it's very hard to separate those two things. But I certainly felt that when I went on shorter trips, so anything is shorter than that. When I went on 3 months trip to India, 3 month trip backpacking around Southeast Asia, it's mind opening. It doesn't have to be travel. It can be putting yourself in positions where you are exposed to different kinds of people, different environments. So when I went to university, even though it was just still in Birmingham, it was just the other side of the city centre, that was a culture shock as well, because people were nice. I went to an all-boys school in a shit area where you had to watch your back, not get mugged, not get attacked, right? I went to university, people were nice. They were nice, right? And I go in there with this chip boys school mentality, chip on the shoulder of always got to be defensive, always got to be sarcastic, kind of negging people down in order to survive. That was a bit of a shock to me. And then once that had settled in, that was like, wow, and it opened up kind of possibilities in my mind. And so it doesn't have to be travel. It doesn't even have to be physical location, I don't think. And it doesn't have to be people, though ideally it will be. It can be the podcast you listen to. People escaping into their earbuds. I think there can be real benefit when used well. You can create that environment, that circle around you with these wonderful earbuds,
I think in essence, in a way, a lot of that comes down to just getting out your comfort zone, whether that is moving to university across Birmingham. I went to Aberystwyth University, and I remember that I first day, I had a few friends that sort of lived there, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go and go and meet them at the student union. And because I got caught up moving in, meeting my flatmates, I completely missed them. And imagine Freshers' Weekend and the one student union bar there was in Aberystwyth. I never saw them again the whole of that night. And forcing me into a situation where, like, I've got to meet people. I can't be shy. I can't be introverted. I've got to go and meet people. Otherwise, I'm just going to be on my own. Really, really changed, the way outlook I have in terms of my communication skills, my social interaction, which may have changed the path of what I did in terms of a career, which is very, very social in terms of speaking to people from all walks of life. In the same way as doing this podcast, like I was speaking to Chris Van Vliet last week about setting deadlines of messaging people to sort of like get on the show. And people I probably would have not had the confidence to message, but setting that deadline, getting out my comfort zone, going, I need an interview every Monday, allowed me to, speak to people I've never spoken before and really have some really great conversations. Same thing with moving us, I suppose, across to the other side of the world. The people you tend to interact with are probably people that are, like you said about with the podcast, like surrounding yourself with good people. I bet the expats you meet in Japan, there's a kind of mentality, I think, with someone who is an expat, because there are people that have that confidence to move away from home, get out their comfort zone, explore new ideas and, new conversations.
I've found always that when I've put myself in the right environment and trusted that good things will happen, good things will happen. Mm. You've got to put yourself out there, and then you've got to be open to them happening, and you've got to try and see the best in things. And that's not always the easiest thing to do. I'm going to tell one story I'm a little bit excited about because I found out a couple of hours ago, and then I'm going to bring it back into fitness now. So a fellow I know, very nice fellow called Dylan. I met him in Tokyo when I moved from Osaka. I moved because I wanted to be in a bigger city with bigger fish and just more opportunities here, help grow the Japanese business. Dylan was at my interview at the Tokyo American Club. I joined the Tokyo American Club because there was a gym and there was restaurants. Also, anyone who's a big baller, big dog expat, so like CEO of Coke, CEO of, whatever, name your company, right? They have a membership there, plus rich random Japanese people, plus, people like myself who decided to pay the 15 grand membership to join. Because I saw value in being around those kinds of people, right? And so he was at my interview, great dude. He's also super into cars. Now he's an order of magnitude or two wealthier than I am. We became friends. Anyway, my car is in the shop. It will be in the shop until mid-January. I happened to text him today and I was like, oh, Dylan, do you want to lend me one of your cars? Mine's in the shop until January. He's got a whole bunch of cars. He's lending me his Ferrari Testarossa. After this podcast, I'm going to go and pick that up. I have a Ferrari Testarossa for a month. Like, if I'd stayed in Birmingham, is that possible? Now, the point that I'm trying to make here, and no is the answer to that. The point that I'm trying to make here is, like, I've purposefully positioned myself to be around interesting, exciting people. But the point is not, well, you could get a Ferrari Testarossa too. No, it's like there are opportunities that you cannot even imagine that can come about if you can put yourself in the right environment. You put yourself in the right environment, you will get dragged up. And the way that this, I think, relates to fitness, let's say that you've been going to the gym and you're frustrated with your progress, right? In whatever way. But you're in a bit of a shitty gym environment. Technically, there's nothing that you cannot do in that shitty gym environment that you can do in another gym environment, in a world-class gym environment where everyone is getting at it.
Normally, my whiteboard decided to fall down, but it's all good.
No worries. But you just don't, because you're not in the right environment to do it. Possibly because you're not believing in yourself, possibly because you're not quite pushing yourself as hard each time. So if you can get out of that, trust in the fact that if you get your ass to a very serious gym, perhaps where there's some athletes in there or maybe some professional bodybuilders, and bear in mind, maybe they'll be taking drugs, but that's neither here nor there. Some physique athletes, some powerlifters who generally won't be taking drugs. If you can get yourself in a very serious environment, that will unlock your mind as to what you thought was possible for yourself. Because all those people have come from somewhere. And that will make you believe you will train harder. You will be dragged up because of it.
I totally agree with that. And I think that doesn't change the more advanced you get as well. Like, I know, like, last year I was in a gym environment that was not serving me. And it was a position where, like, I was going through the motion of training. In turn, I wasn't happy. So I was comfort eating a little bit more, enjoying all the great things Hong Kong has to offer, which is great for the first 6 months, but 2.5 years later, it's just getting sloppy. And changing that gym environment for me was the total catalyst to getting that love for training back. And in turn, I've been in a position where I finally felt comfortable going through a diet in a new environment, just finished a photo shoot, and now in a good place to reverse diet out. But that wouldn't have happened, I don't think, if I hadn't have put the things in motion to change my circumstances. So, like, moving into the book and, like, going into, like, you say on your website you've worked with, like, over 1,000 client transformations, and I'm assuming ever increasing. What are the common things you tend to see that stop people getting the results they want when it comes to their physique?
So when you say book, you're not talking about the free book, so the nutrition setup guide. You're talking about the diet adjustments manual.
I'm mainly talking about diet adjustments manual here.
Yeah, sure. So just for a bit of context, if you've listened to me prattle on and you've enjoyed it so far, even though I haven't said anything useful towards your nutrition and training goals, dear listener, I apologize. Thank you for sticking with it. If you want to know what my thoughts are on about nutrition setup and how I do that for clients, just go to rickbody.com and you'll see a box there to enter your email address. It will give you that book for free. It's all about nutrition setup, and then I'll send you a 1-week email course guiding you through the mistakes that people commonly make when they set up their nutrition, so that you don't make them, so that you save yourself time. That's just totally free. Just BritBody.com, there's a box right there. The book we're talking about right now is kind of an extension of that. It's like, well, once your diet is set up, let's say you've been doing it for a month or 2 months or whatever, you're now a little bit stuck. Progress isn't happening, or it's not happening as fast as you'd hoped. What do? How do you look at your data, assess things, decide whether you need to make an adjustment, and if so, what adjustment? That could be to your calorie intake, it could be to your training, it could, if to your calorie intake, your macronutrients, how are you going to adjust your carbohydrates, fats, are you going to touch protein at all? This is a book guiding you through my thinking process behind that, and when to cut bulk or try to recomp, when to finish each of those phases, how to transition into the next ones. So this book right now, it is not something that I'm recommending that people jump into who don't have a good, who haven't just set up their nutrition, the big rocks of their nutrition in the first place. That may be something that's useful for you later down the line, but it's not. I'm not here with a big push on that. Now, all of that said, remind me a question.
So what are the biggest things you feel that separates the people, whether it's for your coaching or the success story you've had in your book, the separation of the people that really do well with their transformation?
Patience. I don't even need you to finish that. It's patience. But this stuff takes time. Patience and understanding that you are going to get fluctuations in your weight that your behavior is not responsible for. Your weight will fluctuate day to day and throughout the time of day. If I've just finished this glass of water, in this glass of water, there's a pint or 500 milliliters. 500 milliliters weighs half a kilo. So, like, how much heavier am I going to weigh from when I sat down here to have this interview with you and afterwards? Well, I'm going to weigh half a kilo more. I'm going to weigh a pound more, right? But people don't understand that, right? As you sweat, as we rehydrate, as our salt intake goes slightly up or down, as we have more or fewer carbs in our diets, that affects the gut content, the amount of fiber, how much crap we're storing in our guts. It affects glycogen storage, which is fuel storage in the muscles around the body, which causes weight fluctuations as well. The average person does not understand that that's what's happening. They just see the scale weight move and they freak out. And so those who learn to accept that and are okay, they've learned to trust in the process, to be patient, to take their scale weight daily, first thing in the morning after going to the bathroom, so that it's consistent, averaging it and noting it at the end of the week, taking body measurements at that time as well, because body weight is not just about fat loss, right? But you can keep your body weight the same and perhaps have fat loss and muscle gain, but unless you are taking body measurements, then you won't necessarily realize it. If you go to rickbody.com/diet-progress-tracking, diet-progress-tracking, I've got an article there talking about how I get clients to track. And there's a free spreadsheet there as well. Don't need your email address. You can download that and use that as well. It's the exact same one that I use with clients. And that will get most people out of a lot of headaches and guesswork, just that fact of tracking things. But essentially, it's patience, trusting in the process. After that, or well, there's no after that really, like it's another part of it. It's consistency, deciding that they are the type of person who will be consistent, deciding that they are the type of person who gets this done, and then fitting the rest of their busy lives around it. So for a lot of my clients who have busy jobs and family lives, you know, like kids and quite demanding work, a lot of them, it's a case of getting up a little bit earlier than they'd ideally like, maybe 5:30, smashing out the gym so that they can be home for 7:30. If they want to have breakfast with a family, they can still do that. Take the kids to school or kiss them before, you know, their school, and then go off to work, right? And that's before the day beats them down, so that in the evening it's like 7 p.m. They're like, oh God, now I've got to go to the gym. It's a lot of people in that position, right? It's just a case of committing to it and figuring out everything else around that. Yeah.
So you obviously your niche is busy guys is primarily thing. And you mentioned there obviously people being busy and then committing to that process. And I think one of the early lessons I have within my clients is blocking in your diary non-negotiables, blocking your training, blocking nutrition. Yep. But often the big barrier to people maybe being patient, maybe people committing to that time is if someone's day is really busy and chaotic, it always feels like you're adding something onto the pile. And it's always that new thing that becomes the thing that I don't have time to do. How do you tend to communicate that with your guys to prioritize the things that are important and then find that time in the day for them?
Yeah, honestly, I don't have to have that conversation. The people I attract are already coaching. So they're already training, so I don't need to convince them that they should train or that they need to find time to train. Sometimes they may be like, well, you know, I've been consistent with 3, but more like 2 on average. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, they're coming to me for coaching. They're expecting me to tell them to train 3 or 4 times a week consistently. And they know that I'm not cheap. And so they've already made the decision that they're going to do it, right? So I don't have to talk or coax them into it. And I'm not here saying that everybody has time to train. I'm not that arrogant 20-something single guy prick who thinks only through their field of vision. Because I mean, God, imagine the other end of that, single mum, 2 kids, right, with a job, maybe another part-time job after that, just about making ends meet. Come on, like, you know, not everyone is in the same position, right? So but if I was, I'd just try and talk it through with them. Often a solution is get up in the morning before everyone, before the email is opened and before the day and the people in your life put claims on your time.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. You mentioned there a lot about the niche of people you sort of work with, and that's something that's, you know, it's very clear on your marketing and the way you like your application process, which is, you know, quite rightly, you know, extensive. You know, how did you decide working with guys primarily as a niche? And, you know, as you feel it, how much it benefits your career really being specific on the kind of clients you work with?
Sure. Let's say my friend Dylan, the one with the car he's going to lend me, does he take his car to general quick fit car garage to get his Ferrari Testarossa serviced, or does he take it to Ferrari?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right, he takes it to Ferrari, right? because that's the obvious choice, right? If you try to be everything to everyone, you're not necessarily the choice for anyone. And so if you niche down, even though it's scary, you speak to those people much stronger. And so I work with men because those are the people who I know the mindset of the best, right? I can speak to them the best. I can gauge when to like push hard or draw back and have a sympathetic ear. I don't quite have that with women. And because I've always worked with men, I've attracted more men. So I've worked with more men. Now, like I'm so far in that I don't have any experience working with women other than a few like 10 years ago. And so it'd be wrong for me to take them on, right? It's just not my areas. It's best to refer out. And then, but also within, it's not just men. Men's not my niche. It's people, it's recreational trainees. So not people heading for the platform, not people who are looking to step on stage. That's powerlifters and bodybuilders. It's not new people in the gym, because I don't think they're necessarily that suited to online coaching, because there are ways that they can mess their form up, which unless there's very careful online instruction, that could go wrong. And then they would be cheated at a result. Not cheated, but they wouldn't get the result that they otherwise would have. So I work with serious recreational trainees who are frustrated with their progress. They're already counting calories and macros. And there is an age requirement. They have to be over 20 because that's a legal age in Japan. But likes attract. I'm 38 years old, and I've always attracted people who are up to 5 years younger and 10 to 15 years older. And just as I've aged, that's just how it's been, which is good, because they're the people who are more serious, and they're the people who have money to spend, right? And who, frankly, I think need to get these things in check now, because it's not getting any easier. They have families, they have careers, their knees are not getting any stronger. They need to make sure that they get the right side of any future health conditions, right? Because they don't want to be heading for any issues there, right? Yeah, so I this is to say, I really love that niche of people that I work with. A lot of them, they're people who have businesses themselves. I work with a really interesting bunch. But I'm forever amazed. I remember there's this guy, he was working on forget it, James Webb Telescope. So he's working at NASA. He makes carbon fiber bits for that, or did. That project's done now, I believe. He's now in another department. It's like such cool people apply. And I think that comes down to the fact that those people are readers, and they're readers of detailed content, right? They're not on YouTube. They're not on Instagram. I mean, they might be casually, but when it comes to this stuff, they want to read. And so again, it comes down to that likes attract. I put out what is me, unapologetically me, on a page which is very detail oriented, and I attract those people, and that's great.
I think this, as we said this at the start, one of the things that is very, very clear about you is your impeccable attention to detail with stuff. And I think you can see that in every aspect that you kind of do through your business, in that you sort of really, I can imagine you really sort of nurturing the right people into your business. Like, where did the no mobile phones policy come into fruition? And do you feel, again, like the people, encouraging the people that are readers, you encourage the people that are more committed because of that?
Yeah, I definitely encourage the people that are more committed because of that. But anybody who's tried to, basically the only people that get upset with that are people who think they're the exception to the rule. They think, oh, no, I'm really good at writing on my mobile phone, detailed emails on my mobile phone. Whereas if they check their egos for a second, they'd realize that no, actually they're not. They're much better when they're sat at a computer. And the reality is that most people are absolutely god-awful shit when they're on their mobile phones trying to do communication. Now, an important caveat here is that I do not do text message like back and forth. With clients, I do detailed emails. They check in on a Monday. They check in on a Saturday at midnight, so that it's in my inbox wherever they are in the world and wherever I am in the world on a Monday. I block out all of my Mondays. I never take vacations. So that means they never have to worry. They never have to schedule around things. But they have to have their update to me on time. And then on that Monday, they update me in a specific way. I have specific questions I ask, and they've got their spreadsheet and they've filled out all of the data. They know all of that. They agree to it in advance. And I'm able to knock it out of the park with my detailed response to them. So these are detailed emails. They're having to attach different things. And I know technically you can do that on the phone, but it's like, do you want to run the 100-meter race on a balance beam, or do you want to run it on a racetrack with a bit of spring? Don't make things, just set things up in a way where you can succeed. Don't set things up that can lead to frustration. So specifically when it comes down to email and communication, whenever I've had breakdowns in communication, it's always been, I wouldn't say always, but the vast majority of the time it's been because people have been using their phones, and so they've missed something, and then I've had to ask them for something, and then they're having to wait a day until they respond again. And then if they miss something else, I ask for that, and then they have to wait another day, and then they get frustrated and I get frustrated because now it's Wednesday or Thursday, and oh dear, well, it's my Japanese team meeting day and I've got to work with my guys in Japan. Well, I can't answer them. And Friday's my day for reading. So we're all the way back to Monday. So that's how I like to work. People who respect me and want to work with me, they're on board with that. They're okay with that. And anyone who wants to take issue with that, well, that's fine. They just choose another coach. But, for every person that has commented negatively when I've mentioned it, say on Instagram, generally I don't get any negative comments on it. I get surprise comments on it, from yourself. Someone's like, oh, I can do detailed emails on my phone. It's like, okay, mate, great. That's really good. You're not my customer and I'm not for you. For every one of those, I must have had 20 coaching applicants say, when I've asked them, do you agree in the coaching application, do you agree to abide by my no smartphone rule? Oh, I love the fact that you got this rule. I totally get it. In my work, I wish people would not try and respond to emails from their phones. Oh my goodness, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yes, you get it. And they're like, Andy, I understand you. And it's like, that's the kind of synergy that I want with my people, Yeah. I'm not here pretending that I'm good for everyone. I am not. I know that I rub people up the wrong way. That's okay. Because for some people, it's like, fuck yeah, they get me. And actually, in my pricing email, and what I offer, and then what I expect from them, and then how much it is, and that comes after the email that I'm answering to their application of what I think is possible, where they're at, whether I think we can work together or what they need to do first, and then how many months XYZ will take, and then a kind of a future plan. In the pricing email that comes after that, and what I will deliver, what I need them to commit to, and then the price, I say in there specifically, look, you don't need coaching, nobody needs coaching, but coaching can be a valuable thing. If at this point this is not a fuck yes, then consider it a no. This comes down to the fuck yes or no rule that I learned from Mark Manson that I try to live my life by. It's in there, right? So I want people that are all in.
Yeah.
And if they're not, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm vetting for, right?
I think I love that, and you agree that you find the people that get you in this exactly the same way. As I said, we spoke earlier on about how this podcast came about, right? Some of my earlier episodes, the intros were way louder. I didn't have a website. You came back with feedback for me that could have easily pissed off some people, but I think I've got more respect for you than I did before because you gave me some honest feedback. We've now in a position where getting on this call is more exciting because of that thing. And I can imagine with the way you are, you said you have reading days, you have Japanese days, you give detailed responses. I presume that would not be possible if you were a slave to instant messages from your clients. If you dedicate that time, you'll get a better quality of service.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be an absolute nightmare. I'm sorry about the lighting right now. I'm working with yeah. No, it'd be an absolute nightmare. It would not be possible at all. And just for context for those listening, when Simon emailed me originally to ask me to be on the podcast, I said, I will if you fix this and this. And I think it was sound levels. So I listened to your podcast and I was like, oh, because the intro was mega loud and then your levels were totally off. And then there was something else. There was something on the website. I was like, that one little tweak would make it look so much more professional. So I was like, well, look, if this guy, Simon, actually respects me and my time, he'll be prepared to make these two little fixes that I think could be a massive quality boon for him and his brand. And so I'll put myself as the bait here by saying, yes, if you do this first, because that will show commitment. And what did that lead to? Sure, it could have pissed you off, but frankly, I do that kind of thing a lot. And I do it because I'm not looking for casual acquaintances. I want friends. I want people that I can impact, I can rely on. I want people who are a fuck yes in my life. And if I'm just answer like anybody else and I don't give my feedback exactly as I see fit, then I'm just going to kind of be that blurry person. I want to sharply be in focus as you either like me or you don't. And if you like me and you feel really grateful, which I think based on all of the changes that you made to your website, like it's looking brilliant, by the way.
Thank you.
The podcast, like you really took that feedback on board and you spent months working on that and have come back to me and probably my comment. So my comment, it took me 2 minutes to write that email. I judged you as the kind of person that would appreciate it. So I was like, well, I'll take a chance. I think he probably is. I'll just give him it. You've gone and rolled with that now for months. And so I really respect that. And I'm sure you really feel grateful for me actually bothering to nudge you on it, right?
Mm-hmm. I think as well, like, I've had, and I don't want to go too much in specifics, but, as you get closer to, I don't want to say the peak of this industry, I don't want to make it sound like I'm the big I am, but it's like, as I start to interact with people that really are at the top of their game and are well known, in inverted commas, within our small niche little industry, you realize how important integrity is. And there are people that you thought had it that don't have it. And there are people that you look up to that maybe, don't meet your heroes and disappoint your expectations. And I always think it's really refreshing when someone comes in, it's unapologetically them, that is honest, that lives with integrity. Because you could have easily been nicey, not given that advice, and I would have never improved. Or you could have easily given that advice, and when I came back, just ignored the message and never got on the show. It's like, you said your word. It's like, I want this, and this to be improved. And then you came back and you lived by your words, and I went and lived by my words. And I was like, that's the kind of people that I want to be surrounded by in terms of my brand. And I think if more people are like that in the industry gets better as a whole.
Look, the industry is always going to be full of shit fucks, right? But that's our competitive advantage.
Yeah, and I think
the bar is so low, you just have to not be bad.
Yeah,
right? And if you strive to be good.
Yeah, it's a weird industry in the sense of you have problems on both ends of the spectrum. I feel like you have personal trainers that are there for a quick buck, the machine gun cookie cutter online coaches that'll send you a template PDF. But then on the flip side, you've got so much arrogance at the top of the industry where I've seen, and there's a few podcasts where I've ranted on about it, and I won't make this a third one, but like where people blame personal trainers for the problem in personal training. I was like, sometimes there's more to it. Sometimes the people at the top of this field are so defensive of their place that it doesn't give the opportunity. And for every person like that, there is someone like yourself who will go out of their way. There's people like Jordan Shallow, Eric Helms, who are giving back to the people that are maybe have a little bit less experience than them. I'm generally humbled every time I speak to someone like that. So going into like a little bit of going into that coaching process here, you mentioned obviously because you have these big, long, detailed answers and you don't have so much back and forth with your clients. When it comes to one of the biggest things I find a lot of coaches tend to struggle with, and a lot of clients tend to struggle with too, is when you get them in the idea, right, okay, you need to track your data, you need to be aware of these things, you need to be patient, as you spoke about before, especially with newer beginner to intermediate trainees, is errors within the tracking. Without that back and forth, how do you decipher when somebody's like, okay, that's how many calories they think they had, as opposed to this is how many calories they actually had? Like, how do you sort of like use your data and your interpretation to sort of filter out what's true data and what's not quite as it seems?
So I assume the best generally. And then if things look off, then I will have that awkward conversation. I've already templated out actually, for the most part. So it's like, look, looking at the calories and macros I've set and your scale with data right now, even if you are on the low end, or rather the high end of the NEAT responders, meaning that you have a high degree of metabolic adaptation plus lethargy coming in during this cut, you would still be losing more weight than I'm seeing here. So I think we have either a reporting issue of your adherence, you're forgetting things that you've eaten, or there is a legit tracking issue where you're eating more than you think. Basically, like, either you're lying to me, but not necessarily consciously being so, but you're like, oh yeah, I did forget about that pizza then, and oh yeah, there were 5 pints on a Saturday, but they consider themselves 100% and as a calorie adherence, right? Or it could be, you know, that the oil that they put in the pan on that salad, they were logging it as a teaspoon when actually it's more like 2 tablespoons, and then that's, well, shit, 250 calories extra that they're consuming. My math might be slightly off on that, and so that can add up. And so I'm just like, look, it's worth looking into this. Those nutritional calculators that I linked you to in the first email that I sent when we started working together, here's that list again. I want you to go and plug your everything that crosses your lips over the next 2 weeks into both, and let's see if we do have any issues at all. I want you to be especially careful with that. And I know that your gut reaction, like everyone's gut reaction, is, oh no, not me. But when studied, even registered dietitians screw it up. So I'd just like us to assume that we may be making a mistake and be open to potentially finding one. That's kind of how I approach it, but I do it in email, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And I always bring it back. I don't know if you remember this. There was on Channel 4, there was a show called Secret Eaters. And I always bring it back to the clients. You can find on all 4, like, tell my clients someone's going to watch it. There are people on there that go, I'm eating 1,500 calories and I'm not losing weight. Definitely not. And they film them for a week, and they film all the food they put on their plate. They film all the things they put in the cooking oils, the chips off their partner's plate. And at the end of the week, they get 2 big, long Henry VIII style dinner tables. And one, they put the food they thought they ate in a week, and then they compared that with the food that they were actually ate in a week. And the results are startlingly different. And these are people that genuinely weren't lying. They thought that they were sticking to this 100%, but they just weren't aware of these little things that are just almost subconscious habits.
Brilliant. I love it. That's a great idea.
So, you know, I always think one of the things I always look at is, like, again, first couple of weeks ago, right, I want some food pictures of my clients. And it's amazing what I found when I've incorporated this into my business. I had a client recently, he's a personal trainer, been tracking for years, got the first 10 kilos off really, really, really easily, and he was firing away. And all of a sudden, he was stuck at this little 91 mark. And there was a couple of things I tend to think at this point, and, you know, chime in if you agree or disagree with this, but I find that when someone stalls at the close to a 10 kilo mark, like when it's 90 to an 80 or an 80 to a 70, it's often guys going, I don't like being under 90. That's when I feel skinny. So there's the mental barrier of it. So that I got, you know, when I just spoke to these check-ins, it was like, okay, how are we feeling about this number? Like, is there something that freaks you out about this number? But then I started looking at some of his food pictures he sent me, these check-in pictures. And I'm like, typical Indian cuisine. I looked and I went, it looks good, but I can kind of see my reflection in it. I said, no, it's water-based, there's no oils. And then my next few adjustments just came from fats, to the point where any oversights in his calorie intake through sauces and oils and seasonings, you couldn't justify them anymore. And lo and behold, there was small adjustment. The actual overall change in calories is minuscule, but all of a sudden the weight just started going crazy down.
Yeah, so the actual instruction, the instructed change in calories was low, but the actual what happened when they were told to be more conscious of their fats or to reduce their fats, what happened then was the actual reduction in caloric intake from fat went down quite significantly because they were underestimating what they were taking. Yeah. There's also another part of that. It may be, well, I've lost 10 kilos now. I've kind of got to this idea of 80 kilos that I had kind of in mind before. I can slacken off a little bit. And that's okay. That's understandable as well. That just comes down to expectation setting. And maybe they want a diet break at that point. That's just another thought.
Yeah, and I did say exactly that same thing of going into the into a little bit of a diet break at that point. So just so, like, I mean, I don't want to take all your time. I know you're a very, very busy man. So I'm just going to finish off with a couple of closing questions.
Simon, I've got to go pick up that Ferrari.
Oh shit! Yeah, absolutely no problem at all.
That's all. I mean,
I don't want to take you from that.
I mean, how often have I said that in my life? Never. Never.
I'm going to put that as the sound clip for this episode when I do a sound bite. I need to pick up this Ferrari. Absolutely fantastic. Well, okay, really cool. So I'll let you
shatter my reputation that I've worked hard to build up. I'm sorry.
I think going and picking up a Ferrari shows the reputation you've built up. You've got a client lending you a Ferrari. So just to finish off then, I'll let you do that. Where can people find you?
Ripbody.com is the main place. Instagram can be useful on the Fridays. That's when I do a Q&A. That's Andy_rippedbody. But you'll find everything, the free articles, books, video course on how to squat, bench and deadlift that we have as a paid product on the website, ripbody.com. And I just want to emphasize that I'm not come on here because I want you to buy something. I do think I have some useful stuff. I think you'll get the vast benefit from just reading the articles. They are really my, don't want to say my life's work, but the last 10 years of work. I've poured my heart and soul into that. And I'm happy to answer questions at any time. If you put them in the comments on the articles, I'm there answering every day except weekends. And I have done for the last 10 years. I've answered, I think, 20,000 of them. And I really appreciate it. So I just want you to know that, you know, the information's out there. You're not alone, and I'm here to support you, and you don't need to pay me for that.
I can totally vouch for your website. It's been something that's been in my bookmark list for many, many years now. And like the amount of content you give away for free is, you know, outstanding. And I'll put all the links in the show notes after this. But anyway, I'll let you go and get your Ferrari. Enjoy it. Make the most of it until January.
Try not to crash it.
Yeah. Don't fuck up someone's Ferrari.
Don't crash the Ferrari.
And thank you so much for giving up your time to jump on the show.
It's my absolute pleasure, Simon. Thank you for having me on, and thank you to everyone listening.